Burma, also known as Myanmar in 1989, the country with a long historical civilization, kingdom after kingdom, a centuries with a long epic conflict with Siam. Burma was a land of magnificence. Burma was known as one of the richest resource countries in Southeast Asia, and considered to be one of the largest countries by area in mainland Southeast Asia, with a large amount of population of the various in ethnicity and cultures. From the viewpoints of foreigners, Burma saw as a neighboring country with Thailand and Laos, since they share some similar tradition, culture, and language. The long history of Burma can trace back for many centuries. The country was ruled by eminent dynasties like Kongbong dynasty, which greatly declined after the incoming of British East India Company in 19th century. Despite of this advertent data, the Burmese continually faced many conflicts and wars throughout the history until present day. We will discuss in the following presentation. First thing first, we need to know the background information on Burma. Burma is the country in the northwestern region of mainland in Southeast Asia, located in the Indo-Chinese Peninsula, with an area of 261,228 square miles. It is the second largest country in the Southeast Asia and the largest on the mainland Southeast Asia. Burma lies along the Indian and Eurasian plates, to the southeast of Tibetan Plateau and to the west of the Bengal Bay, and to the south with an Andaman Sea. The country is nestled between the several mountain ranges, with the Arakan Mountain on the west and the Shan Plateau dominating the east. Also, Burma is the home of an important river known as Irrawaddy, which is the most economically important river to the country, with a number of 39.5 million people, including the city of Yangon. Next, we're going to discuss about religion and people. In Burma, Buddhist is a majority religion, with a significant minority population residing in the country. Buddhist in Myanmar is predominantly of the Theravada tradition, practiced by 90% of the country population. It is the most religious Buddhist country in terms of the proportion of monks in the population and the proportion of income spent on religion. However, the early history of Buddhists in Burma is hard to decipher. Bali historical chronicles state that Asoka sent two monks called Sona and Uttara to Suvarnabhumi around 228 BCE, with other monks and sacred texts, as a part of his effort to spread Buddhism. The area has been recognized as being somewhere in ancient Southeast Asia, probably in Tathon in Lower Burma or Nakhon Pathom in Thailand. Also, when we discuss about Buddhism in Burma, it is essential to mention about the most prominent Burmese Buddhism spiritual anchor, known as Shwedagon Pagoda, which has a long history. Some believe the construction was more than 2,500 years in the lifetime of Buddha. The Shwedagon considered to be the most sacred Buddhist pagoda in Myanmar, as it is believed to contain relics of the four previous Buddhas from the present Kalpa. Furthermore, the Pagong became well known in the literature in 19th century from the book From Sea to Sea and other sketch letters of travel, the great depiction of Shwedagon by Rudyard Kipling in 1889. As mentioned earlier, that Burma is a land of diversity in terms of ethnic group and cultural tradition. Burma ethnically diverse nation with 135 distinct ethnic groups officially recognized by the Burmese government. They are grouped into 8 major national ethnic races. First is Bama, a Sino-Tibetan ethnic group native to Myanmar in Southeast Asia with approximately number of 33 million people. Bama obviously the largest ethnic group in Myanmar. Second, Shin. Shin are the ethnic group native to Shin state of Myanmar and Indian Northeast state. The term Shin, initially used by the Burmese in Myanmar, refer to all hill tribes in the western frontier of Myanmar. Next is Kachin, also known as a confederation of ethnic groups who inhabit in Kachin Hills in northern Myanmar, Kachin state and neighboring Yunnan province in China, as well as Arunachal Pradesh, Assam in northeastern India. Next group is Karen or Garian. This group of people reside primarily in Kayin State, southern and southeastern of Burma. The current approximately 5 million people account for approximately 7% of all Burmese population. Next group is Khaya, or the current people that native to the Khaya state of Burma, that in 1875 gained an independence of Karenni state from the Great Britain. And the next group is Mon, that are ethnic group who inhabit in Lower Burma, Irrawaddy Delta and several areas in Thailand, mostly in Pathum Thani province. The Mon were one of the earliest to reside in Southeast Asia and were responsible for the spread of Theravada Buddhism in mainland of Southeast Asia. Nowadays, the Mon are the major ethnic group in Burma and a minor ethnic group in Thailand. The Mon from Burma are called Burmese Mon or Myanmar Mon. The Mon from Thailand are referred as Thai Raman or Thai Mon. Next group is Rakin, also known as Arkhanis, which is an ethnic group in Burma that inhabit along the coastal region of present-day Rakhine State. And the last group is Shan, also known as Thai Long or Thai Yai, are a Thai ethnic group that is the biggest minority of Burma and are primarily living in the Shan state of this country. So we can see now that Burma is a land of diversity in terms of ethnic tradition and race. The Kingdom of Burma has been intervened a great deal by the colonization power of Great Britain in 19th century. The imperialism of British rule in the period of 1824 to 1948. Under British rule, the monarchy was abolished. King Thibaw was sent to exile, and religious and state are separate. Aware of potential nationalist threat, British banned political groups but they terrorized religious organizations. Also, the British continuing to hold a major role of power in Burma for a while until a period of World War, and later Burma gained an independence in 4th of January 1948, also known as an Independence Day of Burma, which celebrates as a national holiday.
To begin with World War I, the outbreak of the war started in August 1914. It was the time when Burma was a province of India that ruling under the British. Even though Burma was not the front line, it did play a hostility, and the war has significantly impacted on the country, both short terms and long terms. The war disturbed the colonial economy in both terms of export and import. The priority was given to the export strategic resources such as zinc, leads, oil, and timbers. It also minimized the availability of shipping for the main export of Burma, which is rice. After Germany's declaration of unrestricted submarine warfare in 1917, shipping sent to compensate for British losses in the Atlantic depleted number ship in the Indian Ocean, hurting Burma's ability to deliver export even farther. Given the impossibility to sell rice aboard, domestic pride crumbled, cultivators went bankrupt, fields went fallow, and rice mills in the port areas closed up. It led to the unemployment and poverty after decades of economic growth. Moreover, it also led to the increasing number of villagers being unable to pay their taxes, get loans, or even obtain their basic necessity in life. Crime also increasing, and the government revenue went down. During 1915 to 1919, Burma also experienced a lot of inner conflicts in the country. For example, the uprising of Kanchin district in 1915. Caused by the rumor that colonial government was short on troops. So the Burma military has to be sent to Europe to be stationed in colony, which led to the uprising by the ethnic Highlander. Later, colonial troops had put down the uprising with force and the leader was executed. However, the rumor seemed to be true in the sense that troops were mainly Indians who served in Burmese military over the Burmese themselves. On the other hand, ethnic minorities were considered by the British. The British called this group of Burmese as martial race. They were those people who sided with colonial power and collected lots of colonial levies from sent overseas services. The ethnic minority were mainly served as a member of labor corps on the Western Front, as supporters on the Allies and Commonwealth troops who were in the war. However, a lot of Burmese who sent it away from home suffer from depression due to the distance from homeland, and large number of them committed suicide. This event led to the rise of Burmese nationalists that made the British remove Burmese from military service in colony from 1929. For the political impacts, Burmese who served in army on the Western Front gained a higher authority military rank since they were able to fill the gap that Europeans couldn't, particularly in the medical services. Burmese and Indian play a significant role in providing basic medical training to the colony due to the lack of available surgeons. However, all of these events didn't make Burmese develop anti-colonialism, because locally they mostly blamed the Burmese landlord, Chinese traders, and Indian money lenders as a group of people that make them suffer economically. Toward the end of the World War I, Burmese believed that they should receive a reward and the aids of the British government because lots of Burmese contribute with the British in the war. But Burma was left out for the considerations of political reforms in India. As a consequence, it led to the first nationalist movement in Burma as a political uprising which caused by the poverty and land alienation. Ultimately, it became known as the Rangoon University Strike of 1920s. Later, Burmese was granted the same political concession granted as the rest of the India, the Indian Ghanshyamfort Reform Act of 1919. It is a freedom to self-governing as the result of political pressure after the war. Move on to World War II. Burma was a country to witness scenes of the most appearing death and deconstruction as troops for the army of 4 foreign powers, including Japan, British, China, and the United States. They fought back and forth on Burmese land. In other words, this war is the spark of Burma's civil war, as the increasing of ethnic tension across the country. Even though after World War I, there was some political relation improvement in Burma ethnic groups, the separation occurred again between the frontier area, who under the British colonial administration has been governed separately from the Burman majority, and the central government. The conflict started from the 1948 and is still going on today between the military and the group of armed civilians. During World War II, Burma was occupied by Japan, the Axis power. Japan entered Burma in 1941 through Thailand. The Japanese purpose was to invade China, which needed to go through Burma. When Japanese invaded Burma, the British retreated to India. Therefore, it was a great opportunity for the nationalists to act as an enforcer for the Japanese forces and attract many mixture of nationalists who were seeking for freedom at the same time. So, it was the beginning of nationalist liberation movement of the feeling against the British, particularly the Takin movement, which led by Kenji Suzuki and Aung San. Over the year, Takins looked for the outside country military to help overthrow the British, so they sided with Japanese and received proper training from the Japanese since 1941. The organization was known as Burma Independence Army, or BIA, with their army called 30 Comrades, who were the founders of modern armed force today. They were a group of collaborationists and revolutionists that fought to end the British rule by assisting Japanese during 1941. The BIA has grown in uncontrollable manners. It was reorganized as Burma Defense Army or BDA under Japanese rule, but still hated by Aung San. But later on, the Japanese power in Burma was decreasing. After Burma became a state of Burma in May 1943, the Japanese gave the Burma independence. The government of Burma was installed, and Burma Defense Army remained Burma National Army or BNA. Burmese believed that the Japanese real intention was not to help Burma gain independence, because Burma helped the Japanese to fight with the Allies. They hoped for the real independence from royalty, but it never came. Later on, as the war turned against Japanese, they declared Burma as full sovereign state in August 1943, but it was just a dissolution, so the next uprising will occur in 1944 as the Burmese switched the sides. On the other hand, in the countryside, The Communist Party of Burma, or CPB, has been fighting with the fascism, which was the main enemy of Burma way long back. During Thakin's leadership of CPB, he refused to join BIA and remained underground to fight for anti-fascists. So in 1944, Aung San negotiated with Thakin, the communist leader, Ba Si, socialist leader, and Kwan Yin, anti-fascist leader, as a secret meeting in Pegu. It's led to the formation of Anti-Fascist Organization, or AFO, in order to oppose Japanese fascism and propose more fairness in society. AFO later renamed to Anti-Fascist People Freedom League, or AFPFL, to prepare for the Second Nationalist Uprising. They asked the British to form a coalition with other allies against the Japanese and Burmese independence as a reward. By early 1945, the Allied forces and BNA worked together and fought against Japanese. In the same year, the Japanese surrendered and Burma became independent in 1948 after the war ended. During the Cold War, after Chinese communists defeated the nationalists in 1949, the United States foreign policy focuses on stopping communist expansion into Southeast Asia. Burma was seen as an important newly independent country and shared border with China, so the US highly worried about helping Burma. Around the same time, encouraged by the Soviet Union, the Communist Party of Burma launches all-out the insurrection against the new Burmese government. By the end of 1949, Chinese nationalists who were loyal to Chiang Kai-shek fled out of the country. Some of them moved near Rangoon, which U Nu, the new government of Burma, was not happy with. He feared that this group of Chinese would lead to communist invasion. Therefore, the Burmese government turned to UN for help and got a large amount of financial aid from the US. The Communist Party of Burma was then very weak. The Burmese army tried to eliminate all possibility of communists, including assassination of communist leader Thakin in 1967. In 1989, as the Cold War came to the end, the Communist Party of Burma collapsed through the internal rebellion. Also, Burma's socialist and isolationist policy were at the same time abandoned. Still, the communist idea still exists around the border of China and Burma.
For the people of Burma, the issues of military suppression and coups we saw these days on the news are not so brand new. Burma spent 124 years under British rule. They had a brief period of about 14 years of independence, followed by another 49 years under military rule. In 1948, the years after World War II, the nation finally gained its independence as the Union of Burma. Unfortunately, there was an unrest and fighting between many different ethnic groups that make the country, and in 1962, the military staged a coup and created military junta. Ruled the country as totalitarian one-party states, Burma Socialist Program Party, or BSPP, headed by the General Ne Win. The military controlled all aspects of daily life and violently dealt with anything that it perceived as a threat. BSPP's power was truly challenged during the 8888 uprising, started by a student in Yangon. The movement soon spread to hundreds of thousands of protesters fighting for democracy. Aung San Suu Kyi, the daughter of Aung San, politician that led Burma to its independence, emerged as a leading voice. But sadly, only within a few months, the protests were crushed, thousands were killed, and the military once again took control of the government. Aung San Suu Kyi was placed under house arrest where she remained for 15 years. During that time, she still continued to push for democratic change with her political party. She gained international attention and earned a Nobel Peace Prize in 1991. The military also targeted minority ethnic groups. After independence, there was an agreement that promised a number of minority group autonomy and a potential pathway to independence. When the military seized power, in order to unite the country, Burmanization policy was introduced to suppress the culture, language, and religion of minorities. By the late 2000s, with international and economic pressure, the military announced a shifting toward democratic system, but only because of the new constitution. They will always hold 25% of the seats in parliament, which mean no one can change the constitution without more than 75% support. In 2015, Myanmar held its first open election since the 60s, and Aung San Suu Kyi from NLD had clear victory over the pro-military party, yet it was still wasn't enough. The military claimed that Myanmar's 2020's election had been rigged, which experts have said it's simply not true. A state of emergency was announced and General Min Aung Hlaing took control of the country. Politicians and critics of the military once again were jailed, including the nation's leader, Aung San Suu Kyi. From peaceful protesters flooding the street, it was slowly led to an armed resistance and violence. These protests were led by NUG, the National Unity Government, which is made up of a lot of people that would have led Myanmar if the election hadn't been overthrown, and many other experienced resistance organizations. All of these crimes by the military have significantly worsened humanitarian crisis in Burma, blocking food, medical supplies, burning down houses, torturing and killing children. Since 2021, global attention has reduced dramatically.
Conditions have indeed gone from bad to worse to horrific.
There were calls for the rightful new government and international arms embargo, as some countries like Russia and China have continued to supply weapons to the military junta.
When Ukraine was invaded, it took the United Nations just a matter of days to take extraordinary action. So the question is, why can't this happen with respect to the atrocities that are being placed upon the people of Myanmar? Why not Myanmar?
Despite the Sino-Burmese War around 1765 to 1769, not only a relatively small country like Burma dealt with the might of Qing dynasty pretty well, both countries also held to neutral relations until mid-20th century. Burma independence was in 1948, and the Chinese Communist Party founded the People's Republic of China in 1949. The two states, born at nearly the same time, established diplomatic relations in 1950 and signed a border treaty in 1960. China provided funds and weapons to Burma Communist Party in the 1962 coup that caused the downfall of their relations. A massive anti-Chinese riot broke out in Yangon. China was clearly seen by some as supportive of the military junta. In 2021, China and Russia blocked the United Nations Security Council from issuing a statement convicting the military for fear of additional economic sanctions. There's a high demand for a release of Aung San Suu Kyi. Chinese ambassador dismissed the claim that China support military rule in Myanmar as a ridiculous rumor. Nonetheless, Chinese factories in the country were set on fire as Burmese protesters did not trust China's response, leaving 39 people dead. The Chinese embassy in Myanmar later responded by condemning the arson attacks, but was ridiculed by the protesters for not offering any sympathy to the protest movement. Despite these statements, China has been, alongside Russia, frequently vetoing any UN resolutions condemning the increasing brutality of the Burmese military junta for fear of additional sanctions that would hurt the region economically. Before the British conquest, the Indians in Lower Burma primarily engaged in trade, but also as civil servants, engineers, river pilots, soldiers, and indentured laborers. After 1918, anti-Indian sentiments began to rise. Indians played a prominent role in the British administration and became the target of Burmese nationalists. Nevertheless, at the start of World War II, almost half of Yangon's population was Indian, and about 16% of the population of Burma was ethnically Indian. As a consequence of the Japanese invasion of 1942, 500,000 members of the Indian community fled Burma overland. Refugees suffered terribly, and thousands died. After the seized power through a military coup in 1962, General Navin ordered a large-scale expulsion of Indians. Although many Indians had been living in Burma for generations and had integrated into Burmese society, they became a target for discrimination and oppression by the junta. After independence, Burmese law treated a large percentage of the Indian community as resident aliens. Though many had long ties to Burma or were born there, they were not considered citizens under the 1982 Burma citizenship law. It led to a huge immigration for ethnic Indians from Burma. Indian-owned business as well as Burmese businesses were nationalized due to so-called Burmese way of socialism. Many Indians returned to India. This caused a significant deterioration in Indian-Burmese relation. If you go to read about the history of the Ayutthaya period, you'll first find about Thailand and Burma's long conflicts. Despite our history and the fact that their historical textbook mentioned Thailand most of the time as an insult rather than compliments, the Burmese definitely does not regard Thailand as its main enemy anymore. After several visits from the Thai royal family, the relationship between Burma and Thai is much better. Burmese refugees have been flowing to Thailand since the 1962. They indeed contribute tremendously to Thai economy, contributing between 5 and 6.2% of Thailand's GDP. Burma continued to cooperate with Thailand in various fields in terms of labor, drug crackdown, cross-border facilitation, public health, and anti-human trafficking. In terms of trade, Thailand's investment ranked 6th after China, Singapore, Hong Kong, the United Kingdom, and South Korea. Major investors such as PTT, CP, and Siam Cement Group. The Thai government promotes responsible investments and economic activities of the Thai private sector in Burma. However, there's very little information about the Central Thai people in Burma. It's worth mentioning that the crisis in Burma is a delicate one for Thailand, given the military junta's tendency to draw parallels between the two Asian countries. To help manage the crisis, Bangkok can play the role of a peacemaker to engage all parties concerned in Burma. Various types of government participate in peace talks, which have been active since the nation gained independence several decades ago. Moreover, the border between Burma and Thailand reopened this year as a sanctuary, which had been closed during the pandemic.
The education in Burma. After Burma was colonized, the Burmese began to realize that the knowledge of Burmese literatures has almost died out, and that aside from rural areas. English had become the main spoken language, as Burmese language and literacy were not that sufficiently taught in school that attended by the majority of students. At the same time, concern about the influence of Western education on the national identity, they tried to support schools that had Buddhism in curriculum. The nationalists also support monastic schools, petitioning the government. They exempt these schools from taxation and discouraging costly religious rituals in these schools. In 1920, Burmese nationalists began to open private schools that were independent from the government control that fostered nationalism ideals. The YMBA, which stands for Young Men Buddhist Association, agitated the government further. They established more national schools that were independent from the British education system, where Burmese was the language of instruction. Their aim was to establish the system that could compete with the British system. Under the monarchy, the economy of Myanmar had been one of redistribution, a concept embedded in local society, religion, and politics. Prices of the most important commodities were set by the state. And in general, the mechanism of supply and demand was relatively unimportant. Apparent self-sufficiency was vital, while trade was only of secondary importance. The British impact on this system proved disastrous, as Burma's economy became part of vast export-oriented enterprise of Western colonialism. For the economy, the Burmese economy and transportation infrastructures developed rapidly from 1890s to 1900, but the majority of Burmese people did not benefit from it. A railway had been built through the entire valley of Irrawaddy, and hundreds of steamboats plied the length of the river. But the railway and the boats belonged to the British companies. Roads had been built by the government, but they were meant for the transport troops. A British company worked the ruby mines until they became nearly exhausted. The extraction of petroleum and timber was monopolized by two British firms. The balance of trade was always in favor of Burma, but they meant little to Burmese people or society. Between the middle of 19th century and the outbreak of World War II, while the price of rice increased rapidly and continuously until the Great Depression of 1930s, this tremendous increase in production created a significant shift in population from the northern heartland to the delta, shifting as well the basis of wealth and power. Next, there are many architectures that were influenced by British, but the one that had changed the most is Yangon. The British influence in Yangon architecture is evident in many of the city's buildings. From the colonial-style homes and government office to the more modern commercial and residential structures. While the British were not the first to colonize Burma, their rule had a lasting impact on the country's architecture. During the British colonial period, Yangon was the capital of Myanmar. The British built many of the city's iconic buildings, including the Secretariat, the Supreme Court, and the City Hall. These structures were designed in neoclassical style, with giardino's, columns, and ornate facades. Other British-built buildings in Yangon include the Strand Hotel, the National Museum, and the Yangon Railway Station. After Myanmar gained independence from the Britain in 1948, Yangon's architecture began to change. Newer buildings were constructed in a more modern style, incorporating elements of Burmese and other Asian architectural traditions. However, the British influence can still be seen in many of Yangon's buildings, particularly in the city's older neighborhoods. Last but not least, let's see why Burma is still a developed country. It shows that 1/4 of its citizens live below the poverty line. Child mortality is higher than comparable neighboring countries. And a fifth of children in poor families are not enrolled in primary education. While the government has built up expectation for real welfare, improvement field efforts have been made to meet the population needs for healthcare and education. Myanmar's key challenge are to reduce poverty through rural development, generate employment for its people by encouraging a more dynamic private sector, and provide improved healthcare and education services. The country's new political diversity is likely to slow the pace of future economic reforms as a more vocal parliament and civil society seek a stake in policy making. Myanmar's leader will need enough political will to implement the next wave of reforms, focuses on public administration. The third reforms are yet to come. Myanmar must change its fiscal priority and reduce the amount of money that military receives. This is the view from the outsider to Burma. Not long after Burma became independent from Britain in 1948, a military dictator sealed off the countries from the outside world, launched the Burmese way to socialism, and turned Burma into of the poorest country in Asia. The same story is told in Orwell's Animal Farm, an allegorical tale about a socialist revolution gone wrong in which a group of pigs overthrew the human farmers and ran the farm into ruin. Finally, in 1984, Orwell's description of a horrifying and soulless dystopia paints an chillingly accurate picture of Burma, today a country ruled by one of the most brutal and tenacious dictatorships.
After Burma gained independence on January 4th of 1948, Burma and Great Britain retained their relationship throughout the years. Both countries had an official embassy on each other's capital city. Britain has been in support of the development of democracy in Burma for a long time. Unfortunately, Burma still has not reached their goal of having a fully democratic system. Britain also has been participating in building peace and stability in Burma with various aids. The relationship between the two would turn for the worse as Min Aung Hlaing took control of the government in 2021. The coup resulted in the arrest of elected civilian government members, and since then, Britain has been pressuring the military government to step down by imposing sanctions on military officials. For Burmese attitudes toward Britain, surprisingly, the attitudes of Burmese people towards the British in the post-colonial era was not too critical. There surely were some resentments about the British occupation, but they also enjoyed the infrastructure improvements such as the transportation, education, and medication that came with the British rule. Burmese people see that the colonial era was far better than the period of unrest and military takeover that followed in that later decade. Nevertheless, the banishment of the monarchy and the mishandling of ethnic groups was uncalled for, and the British deserves the blame for that matter. The British legacy in Burmese culture. The British did leave some cultural impact that we can see in Burma today. The most obvious influence that had left an imprint in Burmese culture seems to be the tea-consuming culture. That was the legacy of British, Indian, and Chinese. Tea shops can be seen everywhere in Burma, and it usually is a place for social gatherings. Also, Burma uses the old British imperial unit as a unit of measurements in the official setting. Ordinary people, however, use ancient Burmese measurement system. They just adopted the metric system in 2019. For the relationship with the United States, America has no history of colonization in Burma, but they stand in support for the developments of democracy as the British did. The American embassy was established in Burma in 1947 and oversaw a series of events unfold, namely the protests against the totalitarian governments and first coup. America did not recognize the nation's new name, Myanmar, changed by the military junta, as they argued that it was done by illegitimate governments. With a period of unrest and atrocities by the military governments, in the early 2000s, the US imposed sanctions on Burma's export and financial institute. By the 2010s, US started easing the grip on sanctions as 2008 referendum promised reform. Later policies aimed to help Burma achieve peace and democracy. The United States Agency for International Development, or USAID, had been helping Burmese on matters of human rights and improving local governance by funding programs for health service along with training activities on conflict resolution. As for the American cultural influence in Burma, most of the American cultural influence we can see in Burma are the influence of pop culture. This statement is also true to any other part of Asia, since America was not a major colonizing power in Asia, so the impact of American culture were mainly from the media, like movies and music. Throughout the decades, there has been a large number of Burmese immigrants in the US. The first significant immigration was in the 1960s, escaping the military rule of Ne Win. Then a second wave came in the 80s to seek better opportunity, and some were political refugees. Third wave came in early 2000s. Most immigrants in this wave are ethnic minorities, mainly Koreans. 2010 census reports that there are 100,200 people of Burmese origin residing in the United States, with Minneapolis-St. Paul, Dallas-Fort Worth, and Greater New York containing the most of the population. Even though Burma had gained its independence for more than half a century now, the political situation of Burma is still highly unstable, with decades of military rule, infighting, and unsettled problems with ethnic groups along the border. The period between 2015 to 2021 saw the first true civilian government in 50 years, but the 2008 constitution still favors the military influence in politics. Aung San Suu Kyi's National League for Democracy party won the landslide in 2015, but Suu Kyi was barred from taking presidency under the 2008 constitution. Instead, she took the position of state councillor. Tensions at present turn for the worse as the hopes for true democracy shattered with the military coup in 2021. Many came out to protest the coup but were faced with use of deadly force by the military. The National Unity Government, that was the government in exile, established the People's Defense Force, or PDF, to revolt against the military junta. The PDF joined hands with the ethnic militias to bring down the common enemy. Many people came to join the PDF from all over the country. They carry out skirmishes against the Tatmadaw, which is the military force. The condition in Burma is now essentially a civil war. The military dictator not only have to worry about the people's revolt, they also face the resistance of armed ethnic minorities that had been prolonged problem since the country's independence. After Burma gained independence from the British, they never came to agreement to coexist peacefully with their diverse ethnicities. Minorities favored regional independence, but dictators had been abusing them for a long time. That prompted minority groups to take up arms and form rebel factions. Some of the most prominent examples are the Karen National Union, or KNU, the Kachin Independence Army, KIA, and Arakan Army, AA. The Tatmadaw and these armed militias group continued to clash until 2015, when the civilian government proposed a nationwide ceasefire agreement, which would hold up until the 2021 coup, when Tatmadaw launched attack on Karen state. Armed militias declared that they would not negotiate with this government any longer, and they stand in support with the Burmese democratic fighters, bringing the military dictatorship down. The situation at present is still ongoing, and we still have to wait and see what happens next.